Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at something that you use every single day, probably without even thinking about it. It's your balance.
Yeah.
But as we age, that effortless balance sometimes starts to feel a little less effortless.
Yeah, it's funny how that happens. You just don't think about it until it starts to, change.
Right.
And suddenly those simple things like walking or even standing still they take more effort. You got to think about it.
That's exactly what got me so interested in these sources you sent over. 2 YouTube videos, both from Lev Neymotin's channel, one on motor neural networks, and the other specifically on the vestibular system.
Right.
Plus, we have an excerpt from a document by Dr. Neymotin himself, all about how to support our balance as we age. So lots to dig into.
It really is fascinating stuff. What I found interesting is how these sources, they connect those dots between what we experience, like physically, and what's going on in our brains. It's not just balance gets worse with age. It's like, here's the WHY.
Right.
And that's what opens the door to figuring out how to address those root causes, which is really cool.
Okay, so let's start with that vestibular system. Now, it sounds like something straight out of Star Trek, but it's actually right there in our inner ear, right?
Exactly. It's this intricate system, tiny canals, chambers, all filled with fluid. And when we move that fluid, it sloshes around, and that stimulates sensory receptors.
Okay.
Those receptors send signals to our brain about our head's position, movement, how we're oriented in space. It's like our internal gyroscope, working all the time to keep us upright and coordinated. We just don't really realize it's there.
So it's working all the time, but why do we really only notice it when things start to, go wrong?
That is a great question. And I think the answer is in how our brains process information. When that system is working well, all those signals are nice and clear, and our brain puts them together with what we're seeing, what our muscles are doing. It all happens without us even thinking about it.
Yeah.
But as we age, things change.
So what exactly happens to the vestibular system as we get older?
Yeah.
I know Dr. Neymotin, in his videos in that document, he mentions that he's even noticed these changes in himself, which is, that's pretty relatable.
It is relatable, and it's not just him,
Right.
Research shows that as we get older, those sensory receptors, the ones in the inner ear, they become less sensitive. The nerve cells, they get a little less efficient at sending signals to the brain, and the signals themselves get less accurate, kind of like like a fuzzy radio transmission. So our brains aren't getting as clear a picture of what's going on, and that's where that feeling of being less steady comes from.
So it's not just our legs getting weaker, it's this whole communication system between our ear and brain becoming less precise.
Yeah.
The big question is, can we do anything about it?
And that's where things get really interesting. It seems like we're not totally powerless against this decline. Dr. Neymotin, he really emphasizes this in his work. He highlights this approach that uses targeted exercises, medication, and even diet. He calls it a synergistic approach. And it's all about supporting the vestibular system from multiple angles.
I like that. Okay, let's start with the exercise part. Dr. Neymotin mentions a device called IsoTone in his materials.
Yeah.
What is that exactly, and how does it work?
So IsoTone is this portable resistance device. It uses something called dynamic resistance, which means the resistance actually changes based on how much force you're using. So it's always challenging you.
Okay, but how does a resistance device help with balance? I mean, I usually think of balance as leg strength or core strength, those kinds of things.
You're right. Those are definitely important. But IsoTone, it goes beyond just making muscle stronger. One of the really cool things it does is enhance something called proprioceptive awareness.
The proprio what now?
Proprioceptive awareness. Think of it as your body's internal GPS, knowing where your limbs are in space, even if you can't see them.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. But how does IsoTone do that? I mean, it's not like it has sensors or anything, right?
Right. It doesn't need sensors. The key is that dynamic resistance. Because the resistance is always changing, your brain has to pay closer attention to what your muscles are doing, where they are. That heightened awareness, that constant feedback between your brain and your muscles, that's what strengthens those pathways, those proprioceptive pathways.
So it's almost like tricking your brain into being more aware of your body by constantly challenging it.
Exactly. And Dr. Neymotin, he actually provides a whole list of exercises in his document using IsoTone.
He does. There's like 20 exercises in total, right? Each targeting different aspects of balance and coordination.
Yep. And they all use the IsoTone in a way that really emphasizes that dynamic resistance and proprioceptive challenge we were talking about.
Okay, 20 exercises. So let's pick a few to break down and see how this works. One that caught my eye was standing balance with arm circles. Now that sounds simple, but I have a feeling it's trickier than it sounds.
Oh, you're absolutely right. It is more challenging than it seems. You stand with your feet together, holding the IsoTone handles, and you do these slow, controlled arm circles.
Okay.
But here's the thing, even those small arm movements, they create these little shifts in your center of gravity.
Oh, I see.
Your core muscles, your stabilizing muscles, they have to constantly adjust to keep you upright.
So it's about those tiny adjustments, the ones our body does without us even thinking about it. And the IsoTone kind of amplifies those, makes those muscles work harder.
Exactly. It makes those adjustments more conscious, more deliberate, and that strengthens those neural pathways. What other exercise stood out to you?
Well, walking lunges with IsoTone holds caught my eye. That seems like it'd be great for coordination and leg strength, which are both super important for preventing falls, especially as we get older.
Definitely. Lunges are already a great exercise for legs and core, but when you add the IsoTone holds, it adds this element of instability, right?
Right.
You have to engage even more muscles to keep control during the lunge.
Okay, so IsoTone is basically turning these everyday movements we usually don't even think about into like mini balance challenges. It's like a sneaky workout. And those are just 2 examples, right?
Right. Just 2 from a list of 20.
Okay, what else is in there? There's one called slow rotational twists
Yeah.
that, well, I'm imagining that one really targets core strength, which, as we know, is so important for balance.
You're right. It does. And it also challenges your spatial orientation, that sense of where you are in space.
Yeah.
You hold the IsoTone and slowly twist side to side. And the resistance really makes those twists, they make them much more engaging. You really feel it.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see how that would force you to really pay attention to your posture and alignment, especially with that added resistance. It's not just, mindlessly twisting.
Exactly. It's that awareness that helps you with better balance in everyday life. It's training your body to react more quickly to those little unexpected things that happen, those shifts in balance, like stepping off a curb, or navigating a crowded room.
Right. Okay, last one from the list, and this one sounds pretty intriguing. Overhead reach with IsoTone. So balancing on your toes while raising the IsoTone overhead, that sounds like a serious challenge.
It is. That's the point. By standing on your toes, you're reducing your base of support, making it harder. And then adding the IsoTone, lifting it overhead, your body has to work even harder to stay stable.
Yeah?
It strengthens all those stabilizing muscles in your feet, ankles, your core, and it really works on your spatial awareness too.
I'm really starting to think I need to get one of these IsoTones.
Yeah.
But before we all run out to buy one, Dr. Neymotin, in that vestibular system video, he highlights something really important. We can incorporate balance challenges into, just our regular everyday activities.
Absolutely. He talks about creating a lifestyle that supports vestibular health. And the best part is you don't need any special equipment or a gym membership. You can do it anywhere.
So instead of just going through our day, we should actively look for ways to challenge our balance. Give me some examples. How can we turn everyday things into mini balance workouts?
Okay, so think about all the times you're standing still during the day, brushing your teeth, waiting in line at the grocery store, doing dishes.
Yeah.
Instead of just standing there, try standing on one leg. Hold it for a minute, maybe 2.
Wait, just standing on one leg while I brush my teeth? Can that really make a difference?
It can. It might seem simple, but it's working those stabilizing muscles, making them work to keep you balanced. And if you want to make it even harder, try closing your eyes. No peeking.
Okay, I'm going to try that. What else?
Another simple one, calf raises. Every time you walk through a doorway, just do a few calf raises. Or, while you're waiting for the coffee to brew, stand on your toes for a bit.
I love those. It's like sneaking in a workout without changing your schedule.
Yeah.
It's all about being aware of those moments throughout the day and making them into little balance challenges.
Exactly. And those little things, over time, they really add up. It's not just about preventing falls when you're older. It's about moving better, feeling more coordinated, being more confident in how you move.
This is all making so much sense. I used to think balance was something I didn't need to worry about until, I was much older. But now I see it as something I can improve no matter what age.
And that's empowering, right?
It is, knowing that we have some control over our vestibular health.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about IsoTone, those everyday challenges. Now, I know Dr. Neymotin also mentioned some other activities that could benefit the vestibular system. What are your thoughts on those?
He talks about things like dancing, yoga, even playing with kids.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I think he's spot on. Think about dancing. You need coordination, spatial awareness, You're adjusting to different rhythms constantly.
Well, that's a good point. You're always shifting your weight, moving in different directions.
Exactly. It's a really fun way to challenge your vestibular system. And then there's yoga with all those poses, like tree pose, Holding those positions really works those stabilizing muscles.
I have definitely wobbled my way through a few tree poses.
We've all been there. But that's how we learn and get better, right? Through those little wobbles and adjustments.
Right. And what about playing with kids? I wouldn't have thought of that as like a balance workout.
Oh, it is. All that running around, jumping, twisting, turning. Think about playing tag or hide and seek. It's all about reacting to those unpredictable movements, sudden changes in direction. That's great for stimulating the vestibular system.
It's crazy how many things we do every day actually use our sense of balance without us even realizing it. I'm starting to see balance as this fundamental skill for so much of what we do.
It really is. And the more we challenge our balance in safe ways that we enjoy, the stronger the system gets.
This whole conversation has really changed how I think about balance. It's not just about preventing falls when you're older. It's about living a life that has movement and play and a little bit of challenge in it.
Exactly. It's about being proactive, taking charge of our health no matter what age we are.
So beyond exercise, Dr. Neymotin also talks about the role of medication and diet in supporting vestibular health. Let's dig into those next.
Absolutely. He really outlines a comprehensive approach, bringing together exercise, medication, and nutrition. It's fascinating how he shows how these different areas can work together to just help us feel better overall.
Okay, let's start with the medication part. What specific medications does Dr. Neymotin recommend?
Well, he starts by highlighting betahistine. That's often prescribed for vertigo and dizziness. And it basically increases blood flow to the inner ear, which helps that vestibular system work better.
So it's kind of like giving your inner ear a boost, helping those signals get through.
Exactly. It can be really good at reducing those feelings of dizziness, that unsteadiness that can make you feel so bad.
Makes sense. What other medications does he mention?
He also talks about Ginkgo Biloba extract. It's known for helping with memory and focus, those kinds of things.
Oh, yeah.
But it can also be good for your vestibular health. It helps with something called microcirculation in the brain and inner ear. Basically, it delivers more oxygen and nutrients to those areas.
It's interesting. There seems to be this theme of keeping the blood flowing to that area to help it. Is there anything else?
Yes. Vitamin D is super important. He really emphasizes that.
Vitamin D. I usually think of that as, for strong bones. What does that have to do with balance?
Well, research has shown that vitamin D, it plays a big role in how our muscles work.
Oh, okay.
And strong muscles, well, they're essential for balance and preventing falls, right?
Right. So getting enough vitamin D, it's almost like preventing problems before they start helping us keep those muscles strong. What else does he recommend?
In his document, he also talks about anti-inflammatory medications.
Anti-inflammatories. That's a bit surprising. Why would those be helpful for balance?
So it turns out that if you have inflammation in your body for a long time, it can actually damage your nerves. And that includes the nerves in the vestibular system. So by reducing that inflammation, you're helping protect those delicate nerves in an inner ear.
So it's kind of an indirect approach, tackling something that could be causing the problem. That's fascinating. Are there any other types of medications he brings up?
Yeah, he briefly mentioned something called neuroprotective agents.
Neuroprotective agents. Those sound pretty intense. What are those?
Basically, they're supplements that can help repair nerves and protect them from damage. Some examples are citicoline and acetyl-L-carnitine. People use them for brain health, but they could also help protect those nerves in the vestibular system.
So it's all about giving your brain and that vestibular system the support they need.
That's it.
Okay, this is amazing. But beyond medication, what about diet? What role does diet play in all of this?
He really gets into the importance of diet in his document. He talks about 3 key things: an anti-inflammatory diet, an antioxidant-rich diet, and making sure you're getting enough protein, calcium, and that vitamin D we talked about.
Okay, let's break that down. Why is an anti-inflammatory diet so important? We talked about inflammation earlier with medication, but how does what we eat fit into that?
Some foods actually make inflammation worse in your body, while others can help reduce it.
Okay.
And remember, inflammation can damage those nerve cells, including the ones in our vestibular system. So eating anti-inflammatory foods is a big part of protecting those nerves.
So what kind of foods are we talking about here?
It's about eating whole, unprocessed foods. things that are rich in omega-3 fatty acids, antioxidants, things like that. So fatty fish like salmon, leafy greens, berries, nuts, seeds. And using spices like turmeric and ginger can be helpful too.
Those all sound pretty good. So it's not about, not eating anything. It's about choosing things that are good for you. What about an antioxidant-rich diet? How does that help?
Well, antioxidants, they're like little protectors for your cells. They fight damage caused by things called free radicals.
Right.
Free radicals, they're like little troublemakers. They can damage your cells, and that damage it can make you age faster and cause health problems, including problems with your vestibular system.
So antioxidants are like the good guys. They come in and stop those troublemakers.
Exactly. And how do we get more antioxidants? Fruits, vegetables, whole grains. Those colorful fruits and berries, greens, bell peppers, those are all great.
Got it. So anti-inflammatory foods to protect those nerves and antioxidants to fight those, what were they called? Free radicals. Okay, and then what about that third category? The protein, calcium, vitamin D. We already talked about vitamin D, but why the protein and calcium?
Well, protein is what your body uses to build and repair tissue, and that includes muscle.
Ah, right. Muscles for balance.
Exactly. And calcium, well, that's all about strong bones, right?
Yeah, it makes sense.
And having strong bones can really help prevent falls, which can be dangerous as we get older.
So it really is all connected. You can't just focus on one thing. But I have to say, it's a little overwhelming trying to keep track of it all.
I know what you mean. But, Dr. Neymotin, he actually gives a really helpful way to think about it. He calls it a combined approach.
A combined approach. Tell me more.
It's basically 3 steps. The first step is starting an exercise routine, using those IsoTone exercises we talked about as like your foundation.
Okay, get those muscles working, challenge that vestibular system.
Exactly. He recommends at least 3 to 5 times per week. Start with the exercises that feel good, and as you get stronger, you can make them harder.
I can do that. What's the second step?
The second step is adding in those medications and supplements we talked about. Betahistine, Ginkgo Biloba, vitamin D, those are the main ones.
Got it. And of course, talk to your doctor before you start taking anything new, right?
Absolutely. They can help figure out the right dose and make sure it's safe for you, especially if you're already taking other medications.
Okay, good advice. So, third step in this approach.
That's where those diet changes come in. Making sure you're eating those anti-inflammatory, antioxidant-rich foods and getting enough protein, calcium, and vitamin D.
So it's like a 3-pronged attack on balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Exercise, medication and supplements, and diet.
You got it. And he really emphasizes that it's not about being perfect. It's about making changes that you can keep up over time.
That makes me feel better.
Yeah.
But how do we know if it's working? How can we track our progress?
That's where the IsoTone's effort gauge and app come in.
Okay, what are those?
The effort gauge lets you see how you're doing during the exercises, and the app, it gives you feedback and helps you change your workouts.
So it's like having a little coach right there with you.
It is, and it can be really motivating to see your numbers get better over time.
That's so cool. It sounds like Dr. Neymotin has really thought about this whole process, this holistic approach to balance.
He really has, and the message I really take away from his work is that we have so much power to affect how we age. It's not about just accepting things. It's about taking action and staying healthy and independent.
That's a really good point. It gives you a sense of control over your own life.
Yeah. It's about seeing aging as a journey, not something to be afraid of.
This conversation has been incredible. I've learned so much about the vestibular system and how to keep my balance healthy. So thank you.
Of course. It's been great talking about this with you. And to our listeners, I hope you feel inspired to pay attention to your balance and, just keep exploring ways to keep it strong and healthy.
Before we wrap up, I want to go back to something you mentioned before about, adding those balance challenges into our day. That was such a great point, and I think it's something we can all do. Can you give us a few more examples to get us thinking?
Sure. How about this? Next time you're making dinner, try standing on one leg while you chop veggies or stir something.
Ooh, I like that. I can actually do that.
Exactly. Sneaking it in while you're doing other things. What else? How about walking heel to toe, like you're on a tightrope, down the hallway?
It would definitely make me pay attention to how I'm walking.
It would. Great for balance and spatial awareness.
I'm already thinking of ways I can add these challenges to my day.
That's the spirit. And remember, it doesn't have to be a chore. Make it fun.
Exactly. Whether it's dancing, playing with your kids, taking the stairs instead of the elevator, there's so many options.
And the more you challenge your balance, the stronger it'll become.
So let's all try to move in ways that, make our balance better and keep us healthy.
I agree.
This has been such a great deep dive. I have a whole new appreciation for my vestibular system now.
Me too. And to our listeners, I hope you feel empowered to do the same. It's never too late to start.
And on that note, we'll wrap things up for today. Until next time, keep learning and exploring. Yeah, I like that message a lot. It's good to remember that we have more control over our health than we think sometimes.
I agree with that. And, beyond those activities we talked about, I think the main thing is to just mix things up.
Mix things up.
Yeah, move in different ways. Our bodies do better with variety, I think.
That makes sense. So instead of walking on flat ground all the time, maybe try walking on uneven surfaces every now and then.
Exactly. Or, instead of sitting all the time, just move more. Even if it's just standing up and stretching every hour.
The key takeaway for me is that the more we challenge our balance, in safe ways that we enjoy, the stronger that system gets.
You got it. And it's not just about, preventing falls when you're older. It's about living a life where you're balanced, living a life that promotes well-being.
I like that holistic perspective. It's not just about one thing. It's about how everything is connected.
Yeah, and that's something Dr. Neymotin really emphasizes in his work. He's not just giving us a to-do list. He's helping us understand how our bodies work, how to take care of them as we age.
Yeah. And that's what makes this deep dive so great. It's not about quick fixes. It's about thinking long-term.
Totally agree. And that really resonates with me, We have a lot of power to influence how we age.
Yeah, it's a good thought.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder. Well, thank you so much for taking us on this deep dive. It's been fascinating.
My pleasure. And to our listeners, I really encourage you to keep exploring and experimenting. Find what works for you. Remember, it's never too late to start taking care of yourself and your balance.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, we'll wrap things up here. Until next time, keep learning and keep exploring.